Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Produce Buzzers podcast. We are so happy you have joined us today, and I think you will be too after the show is over, because you will learn a lot about fresh fruits and vegetables, how to select and store them, how to prepare and cook them, and surprising facts about their history and origin. We hope it inspires you to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, not only for your health, but also for your delight and pleasure as you explore their amazing world of taste and delicious flavors. Eating more of them will transform your life in so many positive ways. So settle back, relax, and get ready for another delicious adventure with the Produce Buzzers. Greetings and welcome to another delicious episode of the Produce Buzzers podcast. I'm Edwin Stepp, your host and executive editor of ProduceBuzz.com. I'm joined once again by Teresa Nolan, the founder and president of Produce Buzz, and Rick Stepp, a contributing editor to Produce Buzz. Our lovely colleague Cynthia Benedetto couldn't make it today, but hopefully she'll be back next time. So, Produce Buzzers podcast fans, today we have an inspiring story to tell you about a group of young people who came together during a global crisis to help solve one of the world's biggest problems, hunger. And our guest today, who will tell us this story, became one of their advisors and eventually a full-time soldier in their war against food insecurity. Our guest today is Luis Yepiz, the Chief Procurement Officer for the Farmlink Project, an organization based in Los Angeles, California, that connects farms that have surplus fruits and veggies to food banks and people in need. The organization is only about 4 years old, but in that short time, they have delivered over 165 million pounds of food and over 137 million meals to people and families facing hunger. In March of 2020, as the COVID pandemic unfolded, a group of students were moved by increasing stories of people who could not get enough food to feed their families, while at the same time they saw report after report of food from farms going to waste because of the shutdowns and the resulting disruption in the supply chain. Frustrated by the helplessness they felt by being in lockdown, they decided not to sit around in despair. They wanted to help their local food banks get access to the food they saw going to waste. They went online, searched for local farms, and made an extensive list of them. One by one, they called each of them, and one by one, they were told no, hung up on, and told never to call again. But these determined students were not deterred. They kept calling more and more farms. They expanded their search to farms in other states. Finally, they connected with an onion farmer who had millions of pounds of onions that he could not sell because of closures to restaurants and processors who served them. So two of the students rented a U-Haul truck and set off to collect as many of them as that truck could hold. They brought them back to their local food bank in LA, and the Farmlink Project was born. Little by little, they were able to get more farms to work with them, and they pressed on. The going was still tough, though. They met resistance and obstacles at every turn. Even large national food bank organizations poo-pooed their work and refused to collaborate with them. Angered and frustrated by this response, the young people of Farmlink doubled down on their efforts. They set a goal to move 1 million pounds of food and got back to work. Through that determination and hard work, they accomplished that goal in just 3 weeks. As a result, they found new allies, both on farms and in transportation systems, and they continued to grow slowly. Then one day, an unexpected thing happened. Their story was picked up by ABC News and was featured in the nightly national news broadcast. Suddenly, they were inundated by calls from across the country of young students who wanted to join their movement and become foot soldiers in the war against hunger. More and more farms got in contact. More and more food banks reached out for help, and more news outlets picked up the story, and the Farmlink movement was on in full force. Our guest today joined them fairly early on. Luis Yepiz has worked for over the past 20 years in helping find food for people who most needed it. His own personal story is also inspiring, and we'll hear more about that in a few minutes. But Luis has had a focus all of his life on food insecurity, growing up in communities that were poor and facing hunger. That dilemma always troubled him, and after work as a diesel mechanic for several years, Luis found his calling at an LA-based organization called Food Forward. A few years later, the founders of Farmlink found him and asked him to come on as an advisor. With his vast experience, he was able to help Farmlink immensely. Eventually, they hired him full-time as their Chief Procurement Officer. And since then, he has been scouring the country for sources of food that was destined for the dump and helped reroute it to needy families. I met Luis at several of the fresh produce conventions over the past years. I was so impressed with his passion, his dedication, and love for the work he does. A few minutes in conversation with Luis, and you will come away inspired and infused with that same passion. He is a dynamic force working tirelessly to help solve the hunger crisis. Luis, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much.
It has been a pleasure to meet you and talk to you so many times over the years and see that passion and learn about the work that you're doing. Let's hear a little bit more about your background, though. Yeah, to me, is a very inspiring story. Where did you grow up and how did you come to this career?
So I grew up in northern Mexico in the state of Sonora,
Mm-hmm.
the Sonora Desert. I grew up in a place in southern Sonora called the Yaqui Valley. It's one of the largest agricultural valleys in Mexico.
Ah,
My family, part of my family were part of some of the first people that came into the valley and actually were part of the initial development in agriculture. So I come from a
oh.
family
So though
farmer.
you have a farmer family background too, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yes. My uncles were the initial, not only the initial scale farmers in the valley, but they also had to set up the infrastructure. They were the first people that sold water, potable water, or water to pump within the town that eventually became a city. They started with generators through the river to actually create electricity. Those were my grandfather's uncles and cousins.
Oh, wow.
My grandfather lost his father when he was 3 years old, so we were the poor cousins. My
Oh,
grandfather grew up working on the fields with them.
yeah. Wow.
But I am the grandson of two farmers that got their little plot of land during the agrarian reform in Mexico in the late 30s
Mm-hmm.
that lived off of their, you know, my grandfather had 12 hectares that
Oh,
he
that's
planted for a living.
right.
He used to do vegetables. He did vegetables while he was, during the 60s and the 70s. Eventually, he started doing grains.
Mm.
Towards the end of his life, he ended up, before retirement, he ended up renting the land so somebody else would plant it.
Oh, got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
but I,
Yeah.
I grew up, my, gr- I grew up not only being part of an agricultural community. My father was a truck driver that mostly worked with agricultural goods when I was
Okay.
a so he would transfer anything from like John Deere tractors to like grain, soy, wheat. Um, some of the biggest jobs my dad would do would be working during the harvest seasons, and he would transport grain to become what would eventually become animal feed, or
Oh,
or go follow the tomato season all the way from southern Sinaloa all the way up to the grapes in Caborca in northern Sonora.
okay.
So my dad used to follow agricultural goods like that
Yeah.
and transportation for them. This is a
Right.
little bit long-winded. So
No, no, no. It's interesting. I love the connection to the farm. I think you
yeah,
had told me that briefly at one of our meetings, but I'd forgotten how much your connection goes back into family farming. And
yeah,
they seem like very entrepreneurial people.
yeah.
And they seem like they have the great work ethic that you have that I've seen.
Well,
So
thank
you've
you.
inherited that legally, not legally, was it? You've inherited it. Well, anyway, you get it
Yeah,
by naturally.
part of my DNA,
Yeah,
part of my heritage.
right.
Yeah, actually, my mother on the other side, she was a school teacher. So she was
Oh,
an elementary school teacher. So I
fantastic.
grew up being the son of a truck driver and a school teacher. I grew up with uncles that owned some of my uncles owned a large watermelon label back in the 70s in
Hmm.
Mexico. So they used to actually bring watermelons into the US. And I
Okay.
remember having to go through I remember the year that the watermelons couldn't be sold in the valley. So we were on the streets right next to the highway selling watermelons because we couldn't sell them to our clients in the US. I
Oh,
remember living through the fluctuations in supply and demand of the produce industry.
right. So you've seen the hard times and the good times, it sounds like. How
Yeah.
did you come to the US?
My father moved to the US in 1986. Um, he got offered a job as a diesel mechanic. He was a truck driver that always fixed his own trucks.
Yeah.
He had a attitude for a really good aptitude to be able to fix trucks. So, and when you grow up with no resources, you become really creative. So he had skills that were in demand here in the US, fabricating, adjusting parts of one truck into other trucks, creating different systems for how to put together the pedals on combining trucks. So he did a lot of fabricating for
Yeah.
50 footers. So in 1986, he moved to the US. He got a job actually in the corner of 14 and Alameda, which is
Oh,
a
yeah.
which is about a block and a half away from the LA wholesale produce market,
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like a familiar address to me. I lived in that
which
area.
opened the same year that my dad moved here.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean, at the new spot before
Yeah, right. There
they
was a,
were
right.
several other places.
Yeah.
And we would come when he got that job, we would come and visit. Usually, when we're free, we would come and visit the U.S. during the summers and Christmas breaks. And I remember very clearly when I came when I was 12, we are staying in at the diesel shop with my dad in 14 Alameda. I remember I wanted to pick up cans, so I started picking up cans. And I would go to the wholesale market to pick up cans as a 12-year-old kid that didn't know English in
Wow.
the middle of downtown LA. So like I guess produce and the LA wholesale market have been a part of my life forever. Literally
Yeah.
my yeah.
So you were able to witness that very close hand being that close there.
Yeah.
And you sold the cans or turned them in for a little bit of few
No, well,
pennies.
yeah, I would go grab my aluminum cans and make some money to take back to Mexico or purchase stuff that I would be able to sell for a
Yeah.
little more in Mexico, stuff that
Right.
wasn't available in the market.
Right.
So
Very good.
that's how it started. We eventually, after my dad being here for a few years, um, the year that I turned 14, which is in 1990, I had to move. My parents made the decision that I had to move to the U.S. and live with my father.
Yeah.
So I moved to the U.S. With my father, and he and I lived in a truck camper in the diesel shop where we worked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I was there for about 2 years, going to school and helping my dad in the afternoons, fixing trucks, doing some fabricating, whatever was available for work, and saved a lot of money. We made the
Hmm.
conscious decision not to rent an apartment because we wanted to make sure we would bring the rest of the family with us.
Right.
In 2 years, we were able to bring the family to the US.
Oh, very good.
Yeah,
So
what a
how, yeah. Is,
yeah.
yeah, please say more if you want. I
No,
was,
no, no, no. What were you gonna ask?
okay. What was your motivation then, and how did you get involved with food recovery and trying to fight hunger?
So in high school, I started working for a radio station that focused a lot on social issues.
Right.
So by working that radio station, I became involved with an organization that at the time was the largest urban farm in the United States. It
Hmm.
was called it was basically called the South Central Farmers.
Oh, so it was a farm right in the middle of the city.
Yeah, and right in the middle of the city that was given by the major two communities in South Central Los Angeles for the purpose of gaining food sovereignty.
Yeah.
It got divided into um, a bunch of different plots, and people would plant their own crops.
Oh, very good.
Yeah,
And that's right in the middle of a big food desert, I imagine, right?
yeah,
Not
in
a
the
lot
middle
of
of South
grocery
Central.
stores. Yeah.
Absolutely. Generations of kids that grew up with nothing but access to like fast food restaurants and liquor stores
Hmm.
where they could buy ramen soups and chips and your dollar burgers.
Yeah.
If your mom didn't make an effort to go to the grocery store and buy groceries, you didn't have access to it.
Yeah.
So there was generation upon generations, and those were the generations I grew up with.
Right.
After being a volunteer at the radio station for, I guess at that point, about a decade,
Yeah.
2004, maybe 2005, the city of Los Angeles decided to take away the land from the South Central farmers.
Oh, no.
Those people had been relying on that plot of land for over a decade with no land.
Oh, man.
And it was about 2 to 3 acres. It wasn't really that big. But it made a big difference because people got to plant the foods that they ate and ethnically specific foods that they needed to be able to continue their dietary habits.
Right.
So when that got taken away, the South Central farmers ended up getting land in the Central Valley to be able to plant food, and
Oh,
it became more of a co-op that has started commercializing some of the food that they grew. They would use some of the food for their communities, but some of the food that they grew because they grew at a larger scale
right.
actually being commercialized in farmers markets. And I became a volunteer working with the farmers market team to commercialize the produce.
Oh, very good. So then they could get some revenue as well as just what they needed to eat.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you sell on at the Santa Monica Farmers Market primarily, or was it other
We were
places?
selling in Hollywood. We're selling
Yeah.
in South Pasadena. Santa Monica was also
Yeah.
several
Right.
farmers markets. Yeah,
Now, those are all good farmers markets. I know them well,
yeah.
having lived there. That's great.
And
So,
I started seeing that no matter how much work we did in urban farming and with people that were trying to develop plots of lands to actually create food access to the places that needed the most, like Boyle Heights or South Central Los Angeles,
right,
we couldn't grow enough food to actually feed everyone.
right.
There was a mountain of food in places like the LA wholesale market
Yeah,
that was just being thrown in the trash that was available. And no one had the actual bridges to be able to make sure that that food got to the places that needed it the most.
right.
So I started volunteering. I eventually stopped volunteering with the South Central farmers and started working with small community-based food distribution sites
Hmm.
and started doing procurement for them. I didn't necessarily knew many people at the wholesale market, but the people from the wholesale market were people that I understood.
Yeah.
I grew up fixing their trucks. I grew up. They were probably a lot of them were immigrant kids the same way that I was an immigrant kid. They
Yeah.
came here in their mid-teens or in their at an early age and grew up here in LA. So culturally, we had a lot of similarities. And then, even then, a lot of them were from Mexico, from the place where I grew up. You
Yeah.
know. So after seeing that, I started doing procurement at the LA wholesale market, and started making sure that that food went to people in need. See, the charitable food system at the time, there was a lot of organizations within Los Angeles that were all competing for the same resources,
Right.
and no one really got enough to be able to feed their communities. So I saw a lot of dysfunction in the way they actually interacted with each other. So my goal was to try to consolidate efforts,
Yeah.
so we could, start working together and start actually providing the food to the people that needed it the most. After doing that work for a few years, I saw the posting Food Forward at the time that I joined them. was basically just a cleaning organization. They were cleaning farmers markets and backyards. They were
Oh,
mostly doing all the citrus trees that got caught in the San Fernando Valley after development.
yep,
So they
yep.
were going to literally houses with pickers and
All right.
picking oranges. So I remember going to the interview, and I remember they said our goal is to be able to recover 300,000 pounds of food the first year through dealing with the wholesalers. And I go, you don't understand. This is something that could be done within a month.
Yeah.
But behold, we did working part time the first year that I was at Food Forward doing wholesale recovery, working part time and borrowing trucks because I didn't even have a truck.
Yeah.
I would go to churches or other nonprofits and go, "Would you like food today?" Yes. And then I would go, "Well, let me board your truck. I'll use it for the day, put some fuel into it, and I'll come back with a full load for you."
Wow. That was
That's
smart.
literally what I did for a year.
Yeah.
Um, and in the first year, we collected, like, I believe it was 4.3 million pounds of food,
Wow. Wow.
which is with me pretty much working part time and borrowing trucks. So we started this little program, and my first goal when we started this program was to consolidate all the nonprofits to allow
Hmm.
them to understand that the only way that we were going to be able to pull off feeding people with needs was to work together,
Yeah.
and started kind of collaborating with the nonprofits that had been established within Los Angeles, and was pretty successful at it.
Yeah. It
Uh,
sounds like it.
this program started in 2014. We started growing. Second year, we did about 8 million pounds. Third
Mm.
year, we did about 14 million pounds.
So you're basically doubling every year. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And we're doing like that, and we're doing it was I was managing the program, and I was by myself the first year. I got one driver the second year, a second driver the third year, keep growing like that. And by the time the pandemic started, we were about to have a breakout year. We didn't know how much of a breakout year we were gonna have. But when the pandemic started, it almost seemed like all the work that we had been doing prior to that was to prepare ourselves for the pandemic.
Hmm.
The year before the pandemic, we got a grant from California, from the Cal Recycle Agency, which is in charge of preventing food waste in
Yeah.
California. And we got a grant that allowed us to actually open up a warehouse.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic.
so we had about 4 or 5 bobtail trucks that I retrofitted with double axles so they wouldn't violate weight restrictions.
There's that diesel mechanic talent coming into play,
Yeah.
and your
And
father's ingenuity in putting things together. That's
yeah, I
great.
remember we were going overweight all the time, and I go, well, let's get some funding and put a double axle on the truck.
Yeah.
So then we got the warehouse, and we were already making a lot of connections, starting distributions in places that were isolated. We
Hmm.
started working with an organization that is now the largest distributor of fresh fruits and vegetables in the high desert in California,
Hmm.
called High Desert Second Chance. That basically started with a little distribution out of a church, and we started sending food to them and to different places within South Central LA, and started creating access to places that never had that type of access before.
Yeah.
Started developing programs, coordinating volunteers in order to actually be able to provide a service to those communities. Started organizing people from those communities to take on the responsibility of actually making those distributions work.
Right.
And working at that point, we're working with the Las Vegas Food Bank, Three Squares Food Bank. We're working with the San Diego Food Bank, working in Santa Barbara, working in Ventura. Started to work with some of the other organizations in Arizona, and we're already having contacts nationally. Now, we couldn't really do much because we didn't have the resources.
Hmm.
We were starting to have that type of
Yeah.
outreach. and people
It
knew.
sounds like to me, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make an observation. You have a lot of talents and this ability to, I mean, the hard work ethic, but you also have this ability to bring people together. It sounds like you
Yeah.
have that. That's an important ability that helped you overcome some of these obstacles. So,
Well,
congrats on that.
the bottom line is this: in the food recovery space, we're a band-aid solution because we're not gonna come up with the solutions that are gonna create more food access
Hmm,
on a systemic level. What we
interesting.
are is we are an emergency response to a human-made disaster that's been going on for decades.
Interesting. That's a very interesting thought. I had not
The one
considered.
thing that people need to take into consideration is that it is our responsibility in the food recovery space to treat the people we serve with the same urgency that we would serve people that go through floods, that go through earthquakes, that through blizzards, the same type of urgency.
Hmm.
And we've been trying to develop a network of people that see this problem with that type of urgency.
Yeah.
Because there are generations of kids in urban centers, in isolated communities, in Native American communities, all over the South in the US that are outside of the traditional distribution channels of food within the US that don't have any food access,
Hmm.
that are 100 miles away from the nearest grocery store,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. I
have
think.
access, yeah, well,
Please keep going. I didn't want to interrupt. This is beautiful. Keep going.
that have access to a cheap burger, but have never eaten an apple, or maybe an apple, but they've never tasted a mango or a pineapple.
Hmm.
Huh? That do not even understand what the benefits of proper nutrition is because they've never actually had proper nutrition.
Right. And
Yeah.
their parents before them, maybe too, have never had that. I mean, you said decades, so that's definitely true. Multi-generational problem. It's
I
interesting
mean,
to me because I think a lot of people in the U.S., when they think of hunger, they think of third world countries and imagine, somewhere far off that people are starving. But the U.S. has a big hunger
yeah.
problem.
But the issue with the hunger problem in the US is not caloric intake.
Oh, right.
Everybody's taking enough calories. The problem in the US with hunger is with proper nutrition.
Interesting. That's true.
People having access to proper nutrition.
Right. Yeah,
Everybody could
that's,
get
yeah,
calories of a loaf of bread and ramen soup or whatever they decide to eat.
right.
You could eat a lot of processed calories and be an obese person in the worst, a person that is overweight and actually not having eaten any nutrients.
That's true. Yeah, you can
Uh,
fill your stomach with potato chips and white bread, as you said, but
Yeah,
your body is still starving, even though your stomach may be full.
and what I'm talking about when I said that emergency response for decades is because when traditional food started being replaced by your Wonder Breads, like in the 50s,
Yeah.
when traditional communities stopped eating, like in the South, where African American communities stopped eating the collard greens, stopped eating the field peas, and started eating more processed foods, as people started moving from the South into the industrialized centers in Chicago during the 30s and the 40s.
Mm,
This became a real issue because people were being fed, but they weren't being fed the proper nutrition. Therefore, you have generation upon generation of people that weren't able to have equal access to nutrition. Therefore, weren't able to have equal access to learning
right.
or to be able to process simple problems that society poses in front of you,
Yeah.
to be able to think clearly.
Where's that gap where they need additional food as well as the SNAP program?
So the gap is the following.
Mhm.
You could say that you provide a certain allocation of money to get food, healthy
Mhm.
food. But if all you have in your neighborhood
Mhm.
are liquor stores and fast food restaurants, how are you going to pick healthy food?
Right.
If you go to um, your regulars, like I think of places like Gallup, New Mexico,
Mhm.
where there is one grocery store, there is a Vashas there, maybe two. But there are people that live in the surrounding area, 80 miles away, that have to spend $20, $30 in gas just to make it to the grocery store.
Mhm.
And on top of that, they have to balance the fact that they have to pay bills, electricity, water, maybe rent, maybe not, but all the other bills. Their kids go to school,
Mhm.
and they have to make a hard decision whether they're gonna use that money to buy calories or spend that money in gas to hopefully get some healthy food when their money's running out already. You know?
Is there a facet of your program that educates kids and adults to
There are
choose
programs.
this?
What we do at the Farmlink Project is we connect large growers and farmers that have significant amount of surplus to distribution sites all over the country. We distribute from the produce donor to other food recovery to other organizations that do the distributions.
Mhm.
There's great organizations that focus on education. The
Mhm.
one that comes to mind right now is Brighter Bites.
Yes, it's a great
Yeah.
thing. Mhm.
Brighter Bites goes into schools, teaches kids a curriculum on how to eat better. And that's what it's going to take.
Mhm.
We could have food in front of them, but if they don't know how to use it, they're not going to be able to use it properly.
Yeah.
How did you connect with the Farmlink project? Tell us that story.
So then we we're doing work providing food access here in LA. We're already making connections where we have distributed food, and we're working with approximately 7 or 8 states outside of California, not on a consistent basis whenever food was available. And when the pandemic started, I remember started hearing about this organization that was sending food into distribution sites all over Southern California, but they didn't really understand the capacity of the organizations they were sending the food to. So there would be a lot of salary that would arrive to an organization that could only take 8 pallets, and they got 20. And that organization would call me and go, "Hey, somebody sent us a full truck of celery. Can you come pick up whatever we have left?" And I would end up doing that. So after doing that for a couple of weeks, I go, "Who's sending you this food?" They go, "The Farming Project." So then they started somewhere around April of 2020. I met with them in June.
Yeah.
And I talked to them and I go, "Look, what are you trying to do?" And they told me, "We're trying to provide food to people in need." We made some connections at that point. They were already working with Taylor Farms, for example. They were working with several other donors. And I go, "Well, if you want to make sure you reach the people that need it the most, talk to me. And I'll mentor you. I'll teach you the ropes. I'll let you know what needs to be done, how to do it, and we could move forward for that. And you could count me as your biggest supporter and as a partner in whatever you need to get done." So then they started offering a lot of the food that they had available. They were offering it to Food Forward, and we would distribute it within Southern California. And they started asking questions about the produce industry, or about the supply chain. There was a time in which somebody donated to them, I believe it was 10 or 20 loads of salt. And the traditional banking infrastructure, food banking infrastructure in the US wasn't able to take that salt. So I guided them through the partners that they needed to reach out to in order to be able to distribute that salt. Provided them with resources, introduced them to other organizations, and became their de facto mentor from that point on.
Yeah.
When
These guys at Farmlink were mostly 20-year-olds, young 20-year-old college students,
yeah, they were
you know,
mostly,
with a big hearts, but not a lot of experience initially.
no, not a lot of experience at all, but what I really liked about them is that they were young and they hadn't been shited by life, by the world, by having lived. So they believed anything was possible.
Yeah.
And that reminded me of myself. And I go, and I was coming to the position in 2020, I turned 45. And I was going, well, I've been working in this for the last 10, 15 years. And I don't know if anyone's going to be continuing this work when I'm gone. So so I felt this is a great opportunity for me to start teaching the new generations, because this is vital work that needs to be continued. So then on top of having somebody continue with the work and keep like teaching them the ropes, I felt like I could do anything because I got their energy just, became part of me. So I felt like I was 20-year-old and the world could be conquered again.
That's great.
Yeah, so I became like, in a way, and it wasn't only me. There was a couple other figures within the U.S. in food recovery that were advising them. But I think I was the one that took a more hands-on approach and actually like was able to provide them with knowledge that led into them streamlining their operations and becoming a better organization.
Yeah.
So after doing that, with them for a few months, they were shooting a documentary, and they came and shot the documentary at the warehouse. And I remember I saw them. They were growing at the time. They were had already probably recovered somewhere around 20, 25 million pounds of food. And I told them, well, you guys are growing, man. So I I know that for you guys to take the next step, you guys are gonna have to hire someone that knows what they're doing. So if you start looking for that person, let me know. I didn't necessarily meet myself. I mean, if you want to start looking, let's figure this out of how you're gonna grow. And they got back to me within a day or two. Well, Luis, we would like to hire you.
That's great.
At that point, I had been a food forward for almost 8, 9 years. And I felt that my calling was to continue the work that I was doing on a national scale.
Mm.
That was the next step. So I was very fortunate. They offered me the job, and I've been here, creating, replicating what we were able to do in the Western United States at Food Forward at a national scale with the Farmlink Project.
Yeah. That's great. And the other calling was mentoring these young people and
Absolutely.
infusing the next generation. So that's
Yeah.
a great part of the story. I love that.
The fact that these kids, they're sharp, they're intelligent, they listen. It's not only that they're intelligent, but they know what they don't know.
Mm.
So they listen.
Yeah, that's not the reputation that most 20-year-olds get today, but they're out there. I think that's definitely true. So that's
I'm almost
inspiring.
50 and my boss is 25. And I feel like a 25-year-old too. So best of all worlds.
That's great. That's great.
That's the way I feel when my grandchildren boss me around.
Yeah.
It's so infectious. And the one thing with the Farming Project that we were able to do is we were able to create an organization that any produce donor in the country were able to recover any type of produce, anytime, no matter, like 24/7, which means people could call the Farming Project at 3 in the morning on Sunday, and there's going to be 2 people who will always answer the phone. I will be one of them. Because the customer is always first. We are able to handle any volume. We were just given the opportunity to recover 360 loads of apples out of West Virginia last fall.
Yeah. I saw the article on that.
Most most organizations in the country saw that amount of food and said, "Nah, it's not. It's too much for our needs." Or the packaging would have to be perfect for us to be able to move it. The bottom line is that because I am the grandson of two farmers, and because most of my co-workers that are, industry professionals are also from the farming world, we're used to making things happen. I've never said no in my entire life
Hmm.
when it comes to work. So we were able to move. That was the largest single food recovery event in the United States.
Oh, really?
What did
Yeah.
you do with those apples?
We gave them to organizations all over the country.
Food banks, etc.
Food banks,
Mhm.
church pantries, Native American communities. We took him into counties that had never had access to apples like that, like in the Navajo Nation, in the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. We took him to churches all over the East Coast and the Midwest. So,
Mhm.
and we had to, we had to package it in a way that was unconventional. Most food banks want their apples packaged in 50-pound boxes, and we had to package them in gaylords in cardboard bins, 800-pound cardboard bins, and our organizations were able to take it. Most traditional food banks just a few years ago would have never taken something like that. But
Mhm.
we are here to actually. That's what I was talking. Our goal is to make sure that no food goes to waste, that
Mhm.
everything gets to people that need it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, um, in the past, there was a certain set of standards that you had to follow to be involved with charities, with food recovery charities. The packaging had to be perfect, quality. There was very, very little wiggle room on quality. Obviously we want food that is edible, but if there is a little spot on an apple, we're not gonna say no to it as long as it's edible.
Right.
So what we
I
do
know.
is, yeah.
Yeah. I know several people who actually sell produce to the food banks. And you probably don't buy produce yourself. It's all donations, correct?
Yeah, it's all donations. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of those people that sell food to food banks.
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of food banks that have a budget to be able to do those type of things, to buy food.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking about, I would say that there's about 10,000 food distribution charities in the United States.
10,000. Wow.
I would say somewhere around there. No, it's probably not exact.
Yeah.
But the large network that is able to buy food, and not all of the food banks within that network are able to buy food. It's probably about 200 food banks.
Mm-hmm. So they get donations and they're able to buy more of a variety to feed the people they're serving.
I'm not sure. I mean, I know that they have they buy food because they want to make sure to have access to food that is not necessarily available during the season, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
or that is scarce.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal is to make sure that we provide what we have available to the
Mm-hmm.
people that need it the most.
Right.
So, yeah, we're not. We also, there was one thing that the Farmlink Project had right away. The biggest hurdle in food access in the United States has always been the lack of transportation.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that your little church pantry in the middle of Kansas doesn't have the budget to be able to pay for a truck to get through their doors, to
Mm-hmm.
pay for a truck to come from Nogales, Arizona, or from
Mhm.
McAllen, Texas, to bring food to them through their doors. So what the Farming Project did is they said, we basically made the decision, we will not pay for food, but we will pay for transportation to make sure that the food gets to the places that need it the most.
Yeah.
I mean, if we work with partners that are able to cover transportation, we highly encourage them to do so and hope they do. But when we work with small organizations that we know wouldn't be able to cover the transportation costs, we do our best to try to cover that for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the
And
most
like-
expensive things in the whole system.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
example, when you distributed all those loads of apples, did the freight carriers give you discounts to help
No.
out? They didn't.
No.
Yeah.
They didn't. And we cover transportation to a lot of small little churches throughout the South
Mhm.
and the Mid-Atlantic and the Midwest.
Mhm.
And that's basically, I think that's because we don't pay for produce, we mostly spend our budget in making sure that the food gets to people,
Mhm.
to the communities.
Sure.
But
So
you
we
spend
do,
your time finding that food, right? Primarily. Or do you work on the transportation as well?
well, initially I was the only employee, so I did everything.
Mhm.
And I'm very well versed in doing everything.
Yeah.
Since we have now, there's 5 people in our team now.
Mm.
We have Joseph Boppin that is in charge of making sure the data's flawless and that we have the numbers in place, the bills of ladings and that we take care of all the paperwork associated. He also does a lot of procurement also. We have our logistics specialist Mauricio Reyes that is in charge of making sure that the food that comes in gets to the communities in need right away. And we have Mr. Mike Meyer, which is our farm advocacy head, he's a long time. I apologize.
No problem.
I should have turned that ringer off. And that's actually one of the largest growers in Salinas calling me right now.
Oh, if you need to
Oh,
take
wow.
it.
Yeah, take it.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I turned it off. And Mike is he's a farmer from Texas, from Central Texas, that worked
Yeah.
in the potato industry for many years. And he's doing really good at doing advocacy to farmers. He also helps me with bringing in food into the system. And despite the fact that I still do a lot of procurement, I still try to bring as much food as possible. My goal has always also been to develop more recipients, to
Oh,
make sure that when we get those historic surplus events, like it happened with the apples last year, like it will probably happen with apples this year again, or an upcoming. There's a lot of surplus in the potato industry right now, so we're getting ready to making sure that those potatoes don't go to waste.
very good.
So, and so not only is it bringing in the food, but making sure that we have recipients for that food.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting part of the process that I didn't think about as a problem, but it could be when
Yeah.
you have those big surpluses.
Yeah.
Well, listen, this has been fascinating, inspiring. We've probably taken enough of your time. Unless you have more to say, I don't want to cut you off if you do, but if you want to keep going.
Make sure we get the website for people to
Yeah.
go.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, let's do that. That's can you tell us the website, Luis?
That would be farmlinkproject.org.
Okay.
Actually, and I'm sorry, I we didn't go in as much, let's see.
So I'll repeat that while you're looking. Farmlinkproject.org.
That is our website, yes.
It's a great website. There's a lot of information there. There's a very inspirational short documentary on the site that you can watch right there on the site. You'll find it very inspiring. And the story of the Farmlink project and what these kids did to get it up and going and the battles they faced, that was really something to see. And I believe you guys were at the Sundance Film Festival with that, weren't you? Were you there
That is
promoting?
correct. 3 weeks ago, we actually showed our documentary at the Sundance Film Festival, and we
Hmm.
had a panel hosted by Food Tank, which is an organization that promotes, sustainable farming and practices.
Okay.
And we also have a showing of the documentary at the Sedona Film Festival this I believe it was this Monday, coming Monday.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I did see somewhere that you're traveling that around the country. So, are
Yeah.
there dates of showings on the website?
There should be as they
Yeah,
come
I'm sure
out.
there are. That's probably where I saw it. That I could see that it was traveling around the country. So, it'd be great to
Um,
see it if you get a
and for-
chance.
the last thing that I would like to say for anyone in the produce industry that would like to donate to make sure that the food that you have available doesn't go to waste, make sure to reach out to us at donations, the word donations with an S, at farmlinkproject.org.
Okay, great.
We'll get to everyone in my team and we'll get back to you right away. The promise that I make in every single produce conference in the United States is that if you call us with surplus, we will make sure that surplus is with people in need within 24 hours.
Wow,
Whether
fantastic.
you call on a Saturday, a Sunday, if you call me the day after Thanksgiving, it will be out of your warehouse within 24 hours. Or maybe if it gets stuck, maybe the Monday after, but for the most part, we try to take care of people the same day.
Yeah, that's great. The
Yes,
customer is always first, you said. So I like
absolutely.
that. Very good. Okay, that's great. Thank you, Luis. Now, remember, listeners, you can check out Luis's website at farmlinkproject.org. Farmlinkproject.org. Go there, check it out, see the great work they're doing. And if you are a farmer, a grower, a shipper of fresh produce, and you have something that you think is going to go to waste, please contact Lewis and his team at donations@farmlinkproject.org. Or you can even phone him. That number is 346 2604 666. 346-260-4666. Help them, join them in their great work in solving the hunger crisis.
Yeah.
So, Teresa's got a little ritual that we do on each episode, and we'll get to that in a minute. But before we do, I got one more thing I want our listeners to know about you, and that is that you're quite an artist. You're a poet, you're a musician, and you're a trained opera singer. And I've heard a little bit of Luis's beautiful voice at these produce conventions. Inevitably, people who know him ask him to sing a little bit. Do you feel up to singing us a few lines of an aria today, Luis, for our
Um,
listeners?
there's never a single day in my life where I feel not where I feel that I cannot sing. So
Let's hear that wonderful voice then, if you're up to it.
okay, this is a little I would say not necessarily an aria. This is a Sephardic nursery rhyme.
Oh, okay.
Let's see how you like this. It's about a woman saying, trying to put her kid to sleep.
All right.
It was duerme mi niño, duerme. Duerme mi alma. Duérmete, lucerito de la mañana.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
I understood one word, dormite.
Duerme, sleep.
Oh, duerme.
Yeah.
That's
I-
good to sleep.
I should have and I warmed up a little. I would have tried a high C or something, but I
That's okay.
up to that right now.
I appreciate you doing
Very
that. I
nice.
know you've had a little bit of battle with your health in the last few
Yeah.
weeks. We won't go into that, but I knew it could be challenging after that. But thank you so much. But there is one last thing you have to do. We put all our guests through this.
Yes.
You see, Teresa likes her puns.
Oh.
And so she always has a pun that she tells at the end of the episode. And Luis, they're always bad. So we just groan at them. We call this segment Home Grown because they're bad. So she'll tell us, the pun, you're usually in the form of a question, and we try to guess what the pun answer might be. So listen carefully, and we'll see what Teresa, what's the homegrown of the day?
Okay, so a friend of mine got a job on a very famous farm. So my question is, what was the name of the farm and what was his title?
Okay. Your friend got a job on a farm, famous farm, not just any farm, a famous farm.
Famous farm.
And what was the name of we have to guess what the name of the farm was and what was the title of your friend's job? Okay.
Yes,
All
job
right.
title.
Job title. Okay, this is a little tough. It's complex. What do you think, Rick?
I think it's Old MacDonald's farm.
That sounds right. That's what I was
Trying to
guessing.
Figure out the
What the title would be.
title would be.
Yeah. How about you, Luis? Do you have
Chief
any
Manure Distributor.
What was that, Rick?
Chief Manure Distributor.
No.
Okay. Any guesses from you, Luis?
Oh,
I think it's Old McDonald's farm too, but I don't know. Something about EI, something EIEIO, but that doesn't sound like a job title to me. But
what
anyway,
did he do? And in the farm, what did he do?
Shoveled poop.
okay, Teresa, we're
All right.
stumped. So what farm did your friend work at and what was his title, her title?
You were right. It was Old MacDonald's farm. And he became the CIEIO.
Oh, that's
Man,
bad.
I can't believe I got that close.
And you got those.
Oh, Luis, you were not supposed to laugh. We're supposed to groan.
That was clever, though.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Luis. I hope to see you again soon at one of our produce events. And keep up the good work. It's very inspiring what you're doing. You educated us a lot about this disaster, not a natural disaster, but an emergency that is occurring in the country. And we appreciate being enlightened on that. And don't forget to go to farmlinkproject.org there. If you want to help out, you can help out by making a donation there. And you in the produce industry, if you have some surplus, please get in touch at donations@theffarmlinkproject.org.
Or farmlinkproject.org. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Not the Farmlink. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Good luck and
great.
all the best to you.
Great
Thank you
work,
so much.
Luis.
Thanks for the invitation. And
Thank you for coming.
listening to my humble story. Thank you.
Oh, it's inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye.
take care.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Produce Buzzers podcast, brought to you by Produce Buzz, the gathering place for lovers of fresh fruits and veggies. We hope you were entertained a bit and educated a lot about fresh produce. Be sure to join us next time And please tell your friends to do so as well. Like, share, and comment on our Produce Buzz Facebook page. And check out our website at www.producebuzz.com. There you will find articles about fresh fruits and veggies, how to select, store, and prepare them, as well as lots of interesting facts about all the wonderful bounty the earth provides for us. Until next time, be fruitful and don't forget to veg out.